WNST. Certainly the Canadian national passion is hockey, and lots of teams alive, including the Maple Leafs against the Caps. But I'll tell you what, the Toronto Blue Jays may be in the market for a new manager or some sort of new structure. The Orioles have left Toronto, the best team in baseball, and have left the Blue Jays in the ashes as the worst team in baseball. Luke Jones and I have been monitoring the Orioles all weekend long. Plenty of Twittering and social mediaing, and certainly bad news on the Orioles side with Zach Britton and Adam Jones running into walls. But hard to argue with the results, Luke Jones. The Orioles are the best team in Major League Baseball through 2 weeks, right?
Absolutely, and as I wrote at WNST.net and said after Sunday's 11-4 win over the Blue Jays, I mean, you can talk all you want about Toronto. I mean, clearly they're off to a bad start. You mentioned the managerial change. They just gave John Gibbons an extension last month.
It's crazy, right?
I mean, it's just, talk about awkward. They're not hitting, and their pitching is clearly, now Sanchez and is on the DL. Jay Happ leaves Sunday's game with elbow discomfort. I mean, we talk all the time that you can't win a pennant in April, but you can certainly lose a pennant in April. And 2-10, yeah, there are 150 games to go for the Blue Jays, but it can get late pretty early for them.
Well, hypothetically, where would we be? What would we be talking about right now if the Orioles were 2-10?
I mean, you'd be talking about what's going on. How's it going to be fixed? Can it be fixed?
Trading Manny Machado. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that would happen if the thing went off the. I mean, we were all worried about that with the starting pitching. Now, they have had much, much better starting pitching through 2 weeks than we probably thought possible, right?
Yeah, I mean, Dylan Bundy, another exceptional outing for him on Sunday. I mean, he's been terrific. ERA under 2 right now. I mean, he's not going to continue that, but he's absolutely, so far, and again, we're talking about 3 starts, he's looking like he is taking the step that the Orioles needed him to.
Does it begin with an A? Is it a 3-letter word? Or are we?
I think it's early for that, but at the very least, and I said this before the season, he needed to blossom into a top half of the rotation guy, and he is, at the very least, looking like that right now.
Yeah, he could have 2 bad starts mixed in, and he'd still be middle of the rotation right now, just based on, he's tracking innings, he's conserving pitches, he's getting out of the little jams that he creates, he's striking guys. I don't know what else you want from the kid. I mean, unless you want 125 pitches out of him right now, and I don't think anybody wants that out of him at this point. Right?
Yeah, you don't want to be seeing. You don't want to see that from any pitcher at this early stage. I mean, you're not pushing the gas that hard on really anyone in this day and age at this stage of the season. But the slider's been huge for him, missing bats. I mean, the first inning gets into a jam, first and third, nobody out, and kind of thinking, okay, can he get out of this without giving up more than 1 run? And strikes out Batista with a nasty slider, and then gets Morales to ground into a double play. So, they're starting pitching, save for Ubaldo Jimenez, and clearly wondering what's going to happen with Chris Tillman long term. Even though Alec Asher looked pretty good on Saturday, the starting pitching has been okay. Wade Miley has been okay. Kevin Gausman looked much better in this last start. So, we've said all along, it doesn't need to be a top 5 kind of starting rotation. Can they at least be middle of the pack in the American League? And I think that's the formula that, assuming they're going to hit, and certainly they're hitting home runs, and we've seen the offense awaken over these last 3 or 4 games, although Saturday, not a whole lot of offense to speak of. But you expect the offense to be at least hitting a lot of home runs, and they're going to have stretches where they score a lot of runs. And the bullpen, now, Zach Britton's a big question mark right now, but there is some depth there that you can endure without him at least for a short period of time. If it's a couple weeks, no problem, but certainly until he's back on the mound and looking right, there's going to be some apprehension there. But even with that, and clearly that's something you don't want to diminish, there's a lot to like about this ball club right now, and we haven't even mentioned the rookie sensation Trey Babe Ruth Mancini. Just continuing to pound the baseball and giving the Orioles
another. Can we just call him Boom
problem.
Boom? Can we just do that, or is that passé to bring Ray Boom Boom Mancini back in? But when I think of Mancini, I think of Boom Boom, right? I don't think of Henry, by the way, but why not Boom Boom? Why not?
He's been terrific, and it's a really interesting, good problem for the Orioles to have right now. They just re-signed Mark Trumbo. He's going to be in the lineup every day, even though he hasn't really gotten going yet. you have Chris Davis at first base. He's locked in. He's off to a good start. So you kind of have this good predicament right now where you have Seth Smith, who has hit the ball well, Hyun-Soo Kim, who hasn't played a whole lot because they faced some lefties, and you have Trey Mancini, who hit a home run off a right-hander on Sunday. So you start to look at him, and his original role was playing against left-handed starters, maybe seeing if he could play the outfield, and that's still very much a question. He's got to be able to defend. You can't put him out there if he can't handle it. But to this point, in his limited opportunities, he's looked capable out there. Certainly not a Gold Glover, but that decent arm has mostly caught everything that he's been able to get to, and it's a work in progress. But it looks like there's some potential for him to be able to stick there. So you have those three guys for two spots, basically. So it's a good problem to have. Again, we're not putting Mancini in the Hall of Fame yet or putting his statue out beyond the bullpen just yet. But, hey, 7 Major League home runs already in, 12 games in his Major League career. I mean, that's impressive. And that's something that right now it's hard to take him out of the lineup. But who sits then? Is it Kim? Do you take some at-bats away from Seth Smith that he would normally get? I don't know, but it's a much better problem to have than not having any options for those spots. So
12 hitters for 9 spots at this point, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what you want. Yeah, you'd rather have to kind of agonize over who do we put in the lineup. I mean, who do we have to sit? And
it's not Machado right now, and he's the worst guy in the lineup, right?
Right. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, they really, and clearly their offense the first week or so, they weren't crushing the ball, but they're certainly
15 hits is 15 hits. I mean, it speaks for itself, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, Sunday they did. I mean, obviously they hit, but I was talking, that first week, they weren't hitting the cover off the ball, but Machado hasn't hit. Hits the home run using Trey Mancini's bat on Sunday afternoon, which was just a heck of a story.
Thanks like a golden ticket,
or not.
Right?
Even Craig Gentry hit a home run with Mancini's bat, so the legend is growing. But Machado hasn't hit at all yet. Trumbo, other than opening day, now he did get a couple hits on Sunday, so you hope he's starting to get going, but he hasn't done a whole lot. But Scope starting to hit the ball. Hardy hit the ball over the weekend, so you're starting to see this lineup. Starting to see it go a little bit, and obviously you're not going to have all 9 guys going at once, but you're seeing the potential there when they're swinging it well, how potent that offense can be. So couple that with overall the pitching's been. Starting pitching, I think, has been better than what many feared it would possibly be. And the bullpen, even without Zach Britton, you still have some viable arms. And Darren O'Day's looked a lot better his last few times out. So things are looking up, even with some of their ongoing concerns.
We'll get to the Cincinnati Reds in a couple of minutes and the craziness of these interleague games and the weirdness of, thinking back to the 1970 World Series that we've seen basically during every rain delay of the Masson era, I think, that has been shown. I don't think there's anyone in the Oriole fan base who hasn't seen all that. But let's go one by one here. Let's talk about Alec Asher and this situation at the bottom part of the rotation that's going to be coming around, every third or fourth or fifth day at this point, at least until Tillman gets around. Who is this guy and what part of Philadelphia did he come from and how did he wind up here? Hey, I'll tell you what, when you get a nice start like that, and when we went through the list of the Scott Klingenbecks and all of these sort of the Alan Ramirez's and, the annals of Oriole history.
Chris Waters is one that I think of who had a nice debut.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, there's a bunch, right? And right now, let's add this kid to that list. He's on it, right?
Yeah, and we'll see how it plays out. I mean, clearly he's not someone who has overwhelming stuff. His velocity typically sits around 90, 91. He did touch 92, 93 at a couple points, and you could tell he was jacked up for his first start of the year. But the interesting thing with him is last year when he was still with Philadelphia, he made a transition with his fastball. He had always been a four-seamer guy. Doesn't throw particularly hard. Four-seamer, you typically aren't going to get as much movement. So, when you're sitting around 90 with your four-seamer, it's usually not going to be a great recipe unless you have excellent secondary stuff. So he started using more of a two-seam fastball last year, and in his very limited sample with the Phillies last year, you look at the numbers, they're pretty good. Made a handful of starts. ERA was pretty good, and the Orioles acquire him with one of those, cash considerations, player to be named later trades that they have been making every other day, it seems, for the last
that's
3 or 4
redundant,
weeks.
player to be named later, right? You are aware of that, right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying. We've always used that term, and every time I use it, I know it's redundant, but I use it anyway. It's fun.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt.
When was he going to be named? Well, later. Okay, fair enough.
And then you wonder if it ends up being cash or if it ends up being the same guy.
Well, whenever they wind up, because this is the way baseball works, right? It's not like football where a guard goes unnoticed or, a long snap or whatever. In baseball, everyone does get an opportunity, and every one of those players to be named later wind up somewhere being a Taylor Teagarden or a Jack Voigt or whatever they're going to be, and they get one game-winning hit, get one great start.
Sure.
They always come up. You don't know who they are, but they wind up winning or losing a game for you at some point, right?
Yeah. And, who knows with Alec Asher? This might be his only start that he is serviceable, and we might never hear from him again 2 weeks from now after he gets lit up his next 2 starts, hypothetically.
Dude, Miguel Gonzalez could have been that guy, right?
Yeah,
he was he was just a guy when he came up. Rodrigo Lopez was just a guy, and he was for 3 seasons, all he did was win games. So
look at Jeremy Guthrie, who wasn't great with the Orioles, but he certainly had his stretches where he pitched okay, even though they were some god-awful teams that he played on. So
I remember when Jamie Moyer came to camp on his 5th team, washed up, and he pitched 15 more years and won 250 more games. Literally, Jamie Moyer was going out of baseball, so I never sort of unilaterally urinate on a guy who's on his 2nd or 3rd franchise. I'm always skeptical, but that's what this franchise does. This is what Dan Duquette specializes in, and Asher might go out and win 9 games or 10 games this year for the Orioles. I don't know, but he's certainly so far so good. When a guy makes a start like that, I think it energizes the fan base to say, well, let's see what he's got 5 days from now or 10 days from now. You want to see more of him for sure.
Well, and that's the key. He pitched well enough that you want to see him again. And, it's not as though the expectations are out of control now. This is still a guy who very much kind of feels like a quad A pitcher, but he pitched really well. And
I want to see more of him than Ubaldo. Right?
Well, and you know what? Right? That was going to be my next point.
Right.
If he can hold the fort down, and whatever that means, does he pitch can he pitch a 4.2, 4.3 ERA, which isn't anything to write home about, but it's certainly good enough when you look at the profile of this ball club. Can he get them to the point where Chris Tillman is back? And if he's pitching well enough at that point, and if Ubaldo is looking like bad Ubaldo, then you start to have a more interesting conversation there. Then you actually start to have some options. Even going into spring before the revisited issues with Tillman's shoulder were known, it was still a case of, well, the Orioles have 5. You don't feel very good about Ubaldo or Wade Miley. Bundy's kind of a mystery. You feel good about Tillman and Gausman at that point because they're guys who've done it at this level. If Asher can put together 4 or 5 starts where he does a respectable job, then you actually start to have a little bit of depth. Not a lot, not anything that's exciting, but might be enough to get you through to continue to be competitive and to be a playoff contender. So it was good to see. The thing about him that I liked on Saturday, he didn't really locate his fastball particularly well early in that game. There were some pitches he left up, and I think a lot of it probably had to do with the fact that the Blue Jays are struggling the way they are right now with the bats. But I liked his breaking ball. He got some swings and misses with it. It was a competitive pitch for him. So, if he can have that and locate the 2-seamer a little bit better, might be a guy who might be able to compete for them. So, it's much better than the alternative of him getting bombed, sent back to Norfolk immediately after the game, and now you're just automatically talking about, okay, well, who's getting the next chance? Is it Gabe Yanoa? Is it Jason Aquino? Mike Wright has not pitched well at Norfolk. So then you're kind of in that conversation where, all right, it's kind of attrition, and who's going to be the least of the evils, the necessary evils, so to speak.
Well, it doesn't feel like there's a cavalry, and when you get this kind of a start, even if it's a one-off and you never see it again, it's one that we weren't expecting to get.
Yeah, and they didn't win the game on Saturday, but he gave them a really good chance to win. So that's all you can ask for from a guy like that. So we'll see how it plays out. Ultimately, if this team is going to get where it needs to go, I think it's going to be way more about Gaussman and Bundy kind of leading the way, hoping that Tillman, who's going to begin a rehab assignment this week, hoping that he continues to progress. There's definitely some cautious optimism with how he's progressing, and the fact that they're having him start a rehab assignment tells you that there is some progress there. If not, they'd probably have him continue to pitch sim games and do things of that nature to build up his arm strength. So you hope that he continues to trend upward, and then if you have those three, then the back two spots, Miley pitched well his last time out. You can kind of maneuver with that. If you have at least three guys that you feel good about, those last two spots become they're still problematic, but it feels like something you can still win more games than you lose and still be in contention in the long run. And that's kind of where the Orioles have been. I mean, go back to 12, go back to 14 until the second half of the season when their rotation got on a roll. At that point, it was Tillman, Wei-Yin Chen, and Miguel Gonzalez, and everyone else. You kind of just
well, that's how Jimenez got here. That's how Gallardo got here. That's
it was
right.
piecework at that point. So I mean, it's it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But again, nice to see Asher pitch well, and nice to see this rotation this last time through. Other than Ubaldo, look pretty good overall.
Britton, let's go through 10 days and forearm and soreness and what this means. When I get the word of that, we all got it on the WNST text service. If you're not on our text service, it is the best thing we do around here, quite frankly. You should sign up. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. You get that, and you're like, all right, so what's he going on for? And then you hear, well, left arm, that's not good. Left forearm, that's worse. So to me, I know this new 10-day DL thing makes it feel like, well, it's a little toothache or it's a little something. It worries me anytime it's an arm and it's a pitcher, period.
Oh, of course. I mean, you're always going to think the worst. It doesn't mean it's going to be. Now, the good thing is I know he told reporters in Toronto after Sunday's game that this forearm strain is actually closer to his wrist than his elbow. Now, that's what he's saying. We don't know. He's not a doctor. But, it does sound like there's cautious optimism that this has nothing to do with his elbow. Now, we'll see how that plays out. There's been plenty of times where a pitcher has something forearm-related, and then, it kind of, comes back to that was still sparked by something in the elbow that's not right. So they've said, as of Sunday, they weren't planning an MRI. To me, why not have them get an MRI and just make sure? And I could see them doing that because I've covered this team long enough to know, and even with the Ravens, there's plenty of times where they say a guy's not going to have testing, and then they get some extra testing just to be extra cautious. So you hope with him that it's not an extended absence. I mean, you have the 10-day thing, but the reality is this team can survive for 3 weeks or a month without Zach Britton. It really is difficult to envision them being able to survive and being able to contend if he has to miss longer than that. If he's out 2 months or if he's,
I know Day's been shaky. Brock, what are you going to do in that last inning? Is there going to be one solution or multiple solutions based on rest? You're the Sabre guy. I mean, to me, it's about getting 3 outs, right? Or getting to that bridge to the point where you can get in the 8th inning and use someone. They have an arsenal. I mean, this is the depth of the team, but the depth becomes thinner, especially when you're getting poor starts.
Sure. Well, right. I mean, that's the key. I mean, if your starters are able to go 6 innings, get into the 7th inning some, then you can endure something like this much better. But if you're getting 5-inning starts, that chain that gets stretched really quickly, and you have days where guys aren't available. I mean, to me, the simple solution right now, Brad Brock has pitched really well. He, to me, defaults into that, if everyone's available and if you have relatively split neutral kind of guys coming up for the opposition, Brad Brock should be the guy that, in the 9th inning. O'Day's looked a lot better his last couple times out. That's good to see. He's someone who has certainly done it in spurts. Remember, late in 2015, when Britton had a physical issue, O'Day saved a handful of games for them. So, he can do it. Michael Gibbons is certainly a guy who can do it. I think that's obvious. Donnie Hart, if it's a 9th inning where 3 of the 4 hitters, due up in the order are left-handed, he's a guy that would make sense in a role like that, in that kind of a matchup. So, they have some options there, but the big key is you got to make sure that Britton's right. And the good news is, in addition to what I said about him telling reporters that it's closer to the wrist, it's not something that's real close to the elbow, for whatever that's worth. And again, I'm not a doctor, so that might not be worth a whole lot based on how these things can work. But even Friday night when he had the issue, and the discomfort was caused from him throwing his slider, which he does not throw very often. So what that's worth, I'm not sure. But his velocity was fine. He was throwing 96, 97. But as you pointed out, he has been giving up some hits. He's walked some guys, so he's been off. I think that's clear. And keep in mind, he had the oblique in the spring, so he's kind of been a little out of whack, a little out of sync. So you got to be cautious here, though. You can't be thinking about getting him back for the third week in April, or the final week in April, I should say, when you have 5 months to go after that. I mean, you got to be thinking him healthy for the big picture, meaning the rest of the season. So, I'm guessing we probably won't see him back in the 10-day minimum, but you hope it's sometime very soon after that. And if it is, it'll be something that you'll hold your breath for a while. But if he looks like Zach Britton, gets back out there and he's throwing at the same velocity and getting a good sync and getting guys out, then it's something that's just a blip on the radar. But until you get to that point, very understandable for everyone invested in the Orioles to be holding their breath with that one.
He is Luke Jones. He will be monitoring all things Orioles and Reds this week in Cincinnati, as Earl Weaver used to call it. And I'll be in Toronto, of course, for the Caps and the Maple Leafs. You can find him, Luke, at WNST.net, as well as Baltimore Luke on Twitter. Anything you want to say about the Reds? I had a good time on my tour there 2 years ago. It's a beautiful little ballpark. They have, much like the Orioles, gotten off to a very, very good start amidst, a season where not a lot is expected of the Cincinnati Reds in a division where the Cubs are going to win. What are they going to win, 110 or 120 this year, Luke? How many?
Yeah, I mean, this is the opposite of what the Orioles just endured with playing the Blue Jays. I mean, the Blue Jays are playing their absolute worst, and who knows? Toronto may never get out of this. They might be a last-place team this year, or they might dig their way out, and they might be in second place come May 15th. But, the Reds are playing well. As you pointed out, no one expecting them to do anything. I mean, that division, I think everyone just assumes the Cubs are going to run away with it. And, the Cubs, they've scuffled a little bit here early on, probably a little hangover from getting the rings and all of that. And it's a young team, and you wonder how they handle success. But I think when the smoke clears, no one expects anyone but the Chicago Cubs to be at the top of that division. St. Louis is off to a terrible start. People thought they might be a team that would at least be in wild card contention. Same with Pittsburgh, but Cincinnati's played well. They've gotten some surprising pitching performances. Scott Feldman being one of them, former Oriole. He's really pitched well. Kind of undergone a little transformation at this late stage of his career. So this is a team that is the opposite of the Blue Jays right now. Blue Jays, the Orioles got at the perfect time with the way they're playing, and Cincinnati. They haven't been unbelievable, but they've certainly played really well. Certainly better than anyone would have expected. So the challenge will be there to kind of cool them off a little bit and try to continue this early stretch where the Orioles are playing good baseball. But definitely weird to be playing interleague baseball in mid-April. There's no doubt about that. It's one of the quirks that they had when Houston shifted to the American League a couple years back, and I think
every night there's this excitement of matchups like the Orioles and the Reds.
I know, right? But I think, and obviously there's always an interleague series going on now with the way the leagues are split up. I feel like this is the earliest the Orioles have played interleague. I don't know if they've had one this early.
I don't think it's. I mean, I don't ever remember them playing like where the weather might not be good. I mean, it's usually end of May.
So we'll get to see Kevin Gausman and Ubaldo Jimenez and Wade Miley take their hacks this week, which I'm sure everyone just can't wait to see all that, right?
Not nearly as much fun as watching Bartolo Colon.
Right, or someone like Madison Bumgarner or Jake Arrieta swing the bat.
You know what? Yeah, I mean, Arrieta, he should just play outfield the other 4 days, right?
Well, same with Bumgarner. I mean, Bumgarner hit 2 on opening day. I mean, that's
incredible.
Crazy. I mean, it's and I always hear it's funny to hear some of these people talk as far as, well, these pitchers are better hitters, and pump the brakes. I mean, you still look at their overall numbers; they're still not good. They're just really good for a pitcher. But I guess that's something compared to you know me, I'm not a big National League style of baseball fan.
You're new school, not old school.
I was raised in the raised on American League baseball. I'd much rather see a real hitter in there than a pitcher who's going to try to bunt or just flail away helplessly at a few pitches.
Well, by the way, when I get done with this Oakland A's book, I'm giving it to you because I'm really enjoying reading it. I mean, I'm like 50 or 60 pages, and I'm not in any hurry, And I've been doing a lot more of like writing than reading, hopefully. So, but I'm getting through it. This Charlie Finley book, it's right at the dawn of the DH. It's all covered in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, they were one of the benefactors. It had an extra couple of big bats lying around. So, one day you and I, when we're really bored and things are slow and the Orioles aren't in the pennant race, we'll sit here and discuss, ad nauseum or at length at least, the merits of the DH versus the pitcher, because it's not going anywhere. I mean, obviously, it's been 45 years. This is the way it's going to be, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no way the DH is going anywhere at this
Players
point.
Association won't have it.
If at some point, even though teams and traditionalists are going to go kicking and screaming, at some point, I think we'll see pitchers no longer bat. At some point, I don't know if that's 5 years from now, 20 years from now, but that's the one that feels like if we're ever going to have standard rules across the board, which we should. I mean, this idea, especially if you're playing the last weekend series of the regular season and you're a game out of the wild card, and you're going to suddenly play National League style ball. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, you think of NL clubs coming to the AL. Okay, you might not have the optimal DH, but you still have someone in there that's better than a pitcher hitting. So you just think about the disadvantage there. I mean, it's just I'd like to see it standardized, but I know there are a lot of NL fans out there, a lot of purists, and I respect that, but it doesn't mean I have to like it.
Well, you're going to like it for the next 72 hours, Luke
I
Jones.
I will.
Absolutely. Bird's headed off to Cincinnati. He is Baltimore Luke out on Twitter, as well as Luke at WNST.net. We have been discussing all sorts of things going on in the sports world. Obviously, the Ravens getting ready to draft in the aftermath of just the unspeakable of unspeakables with Todd Heap over the weekend. I don't even think I could talk about it, to be honest with you. Certainly all of our thoughts go out to Todd and Ashley, who my wife and I and everybody around here has always been so incredibly fond of. So keep them in your thoughts. I know they have been, and certainly out in social media. We'll be addressing that and more. The schedule coming out, we're going to London, we're going to Green Bay, we're going to Minnesota, we're going to Oakland, certainly Nashville. We'll get those trips out to you later on in the week. And I'm in Toronto for hockey. We're watching the Wizards. We're watching the Orioles. We're monitoring everything around here. You can always find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. It's all brought to you by BuyAToyota.com. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox. That's at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That's brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. It's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life there. And if there's breaking news, as the Zach Britton was bad news, and certainly the Todd Heap situation over the weekend, just unthinkable. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Whenever there's big news, we get it out to you. Certainly, we hope it's good news. Sometimes it's not. And then there's our social media, where we're going to try to have a little fun in Toronto and try to keep you abreast of everything going on in the baseball world, as well as the Wizards, and getting up on the draft. If there's any breaking news, you get that first out on social media as well. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.